Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor. Guys, welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. This is going to be something very special. Somebody I got to meet actually here in New York, Robert Sikes, also known as the Keto Savage, also known as the compound owner who makes the Keto Brick. So just a nice guy, man. Absolutely nice guy. We had a great time at Keto Symposium, and he's done two great talks that really caught my attention. One was at Keto Symposium, and I think a similar talk you did at Keto Con. And I thought to myself, man, how is it that we haven't gotten you on yet? So I'm happy that you're here. If you guys don't know who Keto Savage is, you've been living under a rock. I think really the claim to fame is promoting the ketogenic approach, particularly in the bodybuilding space. And I know so many people who he's had an impact on. I think, Jamie, when she was on, she mentioned that you were coaching her. And then just the broad audience, a lot of people have come to me who follow your content and you've had an impact on them. So I'm just happy that you're here, and we're going to shoot the shit and talk about maybe how you came into the space, and a little bit about how you approach body composition, and we'll see where it goes. Maybe we could talk about the Keto Brick, which, by the way, I had the Keto Brick myself. Okay. And I had the whey protein one, which I loved. And then I love the pea protein one. And I look on the back just to check the label, and I'm like, pea protein. And I texted you. I'm like, what did you do to me? Don't give me those vegetables, man. In any case, listen, I'm happy to have you on.
Hey man, I'm happy to be here. It's a pleasure meeting you at the Keto Symposium and Keto Con as well. So always a pleasure chatting with you, brother. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So you've been in the space for a bit, and but maybe just for the person who doesn't know about you, we may have some differing audiences. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, and how you got into the space, and sort of the metamorphosis of, your diet and your approach to this, and what made you take those next steps? Because I know you're a small business owner, and that's, and you're a coach, and you're so you're clearly invested in the space, and you've been moved enough in the space that you think we need to spread this. So yeah. How did you get started? And tell me kind of the whole journey.
Yeah, man. So I started bodybuilding as a junior in high school, because I was just like that scrawny kid. I was 115 pounds soaking wet, had no size to me. And I tried to, I don't know, I think that probably helped, impacted my confidence. I just wasn't the person that I wanted to be. I looked up to my uncle a lot. My uncle was always playing sports, and he just was the more outgoing member of the family. So I asked him to teach me how to build up my physique, and he showed me how to do a couple bicep curls, and the rest was history, man. I just took that and ran with it, watched a bunch of YouTube videos, like people do when they're wanting to learn something.
Were you on bodybuilding.com back then? Were you on bodybuilding?
Yeah. I was on bodybuilding.com. I didn't have like a body space account, I believe what they call them. But my first year of working out, like I lived in the country. I didn't have a vehicle, in high school to get to the gym. So I just fashioned a bunch of, gym equipment out of pieces of scrap metal and steel my dad had laying around the shop. My first bench was a green Igloo ice chest with a towel thrown on top of it. And that's all I had for the first year of working out. But even with just those minimal, equipment, I saw some pretty significant improvements. Like I put on about 20 pounds. I was stronger, and I just fell in love with it, man. Like this was the first thing in my life where it was like, look, it doesn't rely on somebody else's input. This is 100% wholly, you eat what you sow kind of deal. So I just dove into it wholeheartedly and started diving into nutrition. I got on bodybuilding.com, was reading everything I could online, watching YouTube videos. And the philosophy then was just eat big to get big. So I did just that. I bulked up to like 230 pounds, and I'm only 5'7", 5'8", so 230 pounds on me wasn't a good look. And then I decided to do a bodybuilding show in college. in my sophomore year of college, and I lost 80 pounds in 12 weeks dieting down for that show. I was doing like hours of cardio, eating like
Say it again one more time. How much weight did you lose?
80 pounds in 12 weeks. Not good, not good at all. I mean, I lost a lot of weight. I went from 230 to like 150 something. I got shredded and I won that competition, but it totally wrecked me, man. Like my relationship with food was totally skewed. I lost any degree of, certainty between what true satiety was, what, fullness was, what hunger was. Like everything just became so skewed with my relationship with food, and I lost a lot of muscle in that process too because I was just doing everything wrong. I was not eating enough of the right things. I just wasn't eating enough in general, so I was pretty much starving myself and not really knowing how to manipulate my training properly.
Sounds like anorexia.
Oh, for sure, man. It wasn't like my goal was not just to simply get skinny. It was just to lose fat, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm so like knuckling it when it comes to just, having my mindset on something. So when I was losing body fat, I mean, that was great, but I was losing muscle too, which obviously is not great. But just simply chasing that physique that I was looking for. And then after the show was over and there was no goal that I was striving for anymore, we all went out to Red Lobster to celebrate. And man, like I ate 3 or 4 entrees, 3 frozen lemonades, 2 or 3 desserts. I put on 20 pounds in 24 hours after that first competition. And that really wrecked me as well, because then it was like I worked so hard to achieve something. I achieved it, and then I threw it away in an instant because of a moment of lack of discipline or whatever. And that really hindered my ability to know what it was I was doing and why. I mean, my identity was wrapped up in bodybuilding at that point. And I just threw my identity away in an instant. And that pretty much triggered my disordered eating cycle, which lasted, I don't know, probably 3 years or so. I would go binge, I would purge, and it just was pretty dark time for me. And I did 2 more shows, kind of following that traditional bro diet approach, higher carb, higher protein, very low fat. And then after my 3rd show, I just realized that there had to be a better way to go about things. So I started doing carbohydrate backloading, which is basically keto during the day and then a bunch of high glycemic index carbs at night. This was before keto was popular. This was back in 2014. So that worked. But I mean, with carb backloading, man, I would literally go to right before going to bed, I would eat a whole Betty Crocker tray full of brownies covered in syrup and peanut butter. Like it wasn't healthy. And I realized that after a while. So I'm like, okay, carb backloading's probably not the key to longevity here. But I recognized that I felt better without the carbs. So I just did carb backloading minus the carbs, pretty much keto throughout the day. And I noticed that I felt pretty good with that. So like I said, there was no talk of keto at that time. There was no websites, books, or podcasts on the subject. So I just started doing what felt right. And that inherently improved my relationship with food, probably because I was eating quality foods. I didn't feel guilty about the foods I was eating. And then I started diving a little bit deeper and then kind of uncovered what the ketogenic diet was, learned about, them using it for children with epileptic seizures in the 1920s. And there was nobody doing it from a bodybuilding standpoint, but I said, you know what, to hell with it. Let's just see what happens. My relationship with food's better. So even if my performance suffers, that alone still makes it worth my while. So I did a prep with a ketogenic protocol in 2017 and brought a level of conditioning that I'd never had before.
Can I pause you? Can I pause you for 1 second? So walk me through that prep with your first step at a keto diet. So I'm guessing if you're going from a bro diet to a keto diet, it's going to be, the macros are going to be higher protein than a traditional ketogenic diet. So what were, like, if you had to guesstimate, or if you remember the macros, I mean, I'm guessing you targeted protein first and then added fat, right?
Actually, no. So when I was doing the traditional prep, it was definitely high protein, like north of 300 grams a day. But for me, when I switched over to keto, like once I actually started to learn about what keto was, I started doing keto in like 2015. And then I did it for like 2 years or so before I did the prep in 2017. And I went through it as pretty much the ketogenic diet was that I had learned about, using it for children with epileptic seizures. So I was doing a really high fat version of keto. At the tail end of my prep in 2017, my protein was down to like 67 grams a day. And that was very, very finite period of time, just like the last couple of weeks. But 67 grams of protein when all my competitors are eating, 250 grams plus. I was definitely the contrarian in the group. But I got leaner than they did. I won the show. That's when I earned my pro card. And I felt great doing it. And I don't feel like I really lost any muscle tissue. So that kind of opened my eyes to the possibility with it. And then I've since just kind of refined and polished that method.
So you didn't really target protein, I mean, at all,
No.
and this is very classic. I mean, the statement in traditional lifting is about 1 gram per pound. So
Yeah.
you I mean, that must have been hard not to do.
Well, it was weird, man. I mean, people were telling me that I wouldn't going to be able to get it pumped. They were telling me that I would lose a bunch of muscle. They told me that I couldn't get lean enough. Like I heard all the negative naysayers throughout the course of that prep. But I like proving people wrong. When people tell me I can't do something, it just makes me that much more motivated to do it. And one thing that I noticed definitely different with that prep versus what I'd done previously is, first and foremost, my relationship with food wasn't significantly hindered. I was still hungry, obviously, because my calories were tapering, but I didn't have that, just total insatiable, psychological effect that comes with most prep endeavors. And my hormones stayed much more stable. And I didn't really lose any strength. Like it was harder to have the energy because my total energy intake was decreasing, but I didn't really lose that much strength, which was really eye-opening to me because the argument from traditional bodybuilders is that the more protein you consume, protein being muscle, preserving, that's going to be what you're, leaning on to keep your muscle in the context of a caloric deficit. But what I've found is that in dropping my protein quite a bit throughout that first ketogenic prep, it was far lower than I had ever had it before. So I would think that that would cause me a loss in muscle tissue, but I did not experience that at all. I mean, I was still pulling the same numbers with deadlifts and everything else that I was doing at the onset of the prep. So that was a big eye opener for me.
So you're doing a very high fat approach. So what does that look like? It's basically a lot of butter on some steaks and bacon and eggs. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of lot of butter for sure. And at that point, I was doing a lot more vegetables. So 2017 prep, I was doing a lot more, just green vegetables, a lot more fiber. Nothing crazy, probably like 30, 40 grams of total carbs a day from vegetables. I don't really go near that high now. But I was doing that then. And then that's actually when I developed the keto brick. So that was something that I hadn't really refined at that point, but I kind of, you know, created that towards the latter half of that prep. So that's predominantly cacao butter. So a lot of cacao butter in my diet as well.
So the shift towards vegetables, that's very. I mean, you're talking about salads with like avocado oil and olive oil, and this is kind of like the way you're structuring it. So what kind of protein? What does it look like for you back then in terms of the protein you're getting in your diet? I mean, is it a small steak? Is it, I mean, I'm imagining if you're coming from the bro world, it's salads and, a mix of salads, grilled chicken breasts, and a ton of avocado oil and butter.
Yeah, so I didn't really eat much chicken. I tried to prioritize red meat, so it was mostly just like a lean ground beef. Was typically what I was consuming from a protein standpoint, and then definitely
Like
like salad.
93/7 or 90/10. I mean, what are you doing back then?
I mean, I was changing my fat percentage throughout the course of that prep. So like when my fat macros were higher relative to protein, then I was doing like a 80/20. And then as my protein was increasing, my fat was decreasing, then I would kind of change that over to like a 85/15, 90/10, and then 96/4. I think I got to at a point with the ground beef ratio, but most of it was pretty high fat. So it was just very little total volume in protein.
Oh, so when you're going 96/4, you're like really dropping the total amount you're eating to keep the
Mhm.
protein regulated.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I
So
mean, I
you're
mean, I
eating
think
not
with
much. You're not eating much.
no, no, during my 2017 prep, I think the last week when my protein was so low, I believe my calories were somewhere around 1650. So not a whole lot of food volume at that point. Now, like my last prep I did in 2020, I think I got down to like 17 or 1800 calories. So pretty low on the total intake. I mean, my maintenance intake's around 3000. So I'm typically north of 3000.
Can you help me understand, your, when you start your prep, I'm guessing it's a 3 month, 2 month prep,
No.
right?
So I typically recommend between 4 and 6 months. If by dieting slower, like that first prep I did when I lost 80 pounds in 12 weeks,
Yeah.
I did 12 weeks, but that's what all the magazines told me to do. Like I didn't really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Now I'll do 4 to 6 months and I'll diet very, very slowly, just gradually dropping calories week by week by week. A lot of people will go in, they'll automatically hack off like 500 or 1,000 calories and they'll just hold that steady. I like to just whittle my calories down over the course of months.
Just walk me through what that looks like. So I'm guessing what it looks like is a meal and a brick, and then you're slowly chopping away at the brick over time.
Honestly, I've kept the whole brick in my macros throughout the entire prep, believe it or not.
So you kept the brick, you chopped the meal.
Yeah, which people hear that and they get like, I'm always going to prioritize wholesome, single ingredient, nutrient dense foods, not the processed foods, my product included.
Right.
So I don't want that to kind of be misleading to people. I just like that texture. Like that was very satiating for me. That was very simple. And when I'm in a prep, I don't like thinking about food. I typically do an OMAD when my calories are down that low. So I'm doing one meal a day. So I'd have a big portion of, ground beef and eggs. So pretty good bit of
So
volume.
you're eating so you're every single thing with multiple hits of protein a day, high protein. I mean, you just demolished it all.
Yeah, I didn't really do any of that.
Got it. So you're OMAD, brick plus food, and
Yeah.
you're whittling away the food, keeping it simple. I would have thought you would have done it the other way around. You keep like a standard meal, right? You keep a standard meal, and you would whittle away the brick.
Yeah,
Like go
you
from
certainly can do that.
yeah,
And I don't ever like any of my clients that are doing a prep, like I never say that they have to have a brick. Like the brick was made by my own self for my own use
yeah.
as a way to just simplify my meal prep. So like people that want to use it, great. People that don't want to use it, you can totally do my protocol without it.
No, what I love about using something like the brick is it just makes it very easy in terms of what am I going to eat? Have your one meal, keep that set, and then keep when you get people don't understand when you're getting Instagram shape ready or competition ready, it needs to be easy, brainless, assigned. This is what you're eating. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And like it's very easy. Have a meal and a brick. Next week, have a meal and 3/4 of a brick. Week
Yeah.
after that, have a meal and half a brick. And people don't get the amount of you just need it to be so easy when you get to that point. So your first competition, you made the brick and just for you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it was never designed to be a product. That was when I was first getting into content creation. So I was like starting to put stuff on YouTube and Instagram, and I made a podcast. And then I was documenting this prep in 2017, like full day of eating videos. And I featured the brick because that was just something that I was playing around with and eating. And I kept getting a lot of people asking about what it was, how they could make it, where they could buy it. And I just kind of wrote it off. Like, I'm like, oh, it's nothing, just something I'm using for this prep. And then I just kept getting those comments. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll make it into a product. My mom recommended that. My wife recommended that. So we just rolled up our sleeves and dove into the wonderful world of owning a food product business. And the rest is history. The brick just took over.
So help me. I know exactly what it's like. You say the rest is history, but that's hard. A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
You skipped over a lot of pain and agony. So walk me through. You're doing this, and after your first like big, show, are people starting to ask you questions in that space? Because that's not exactly the keto space. So
Yeah.
I'm sure people are coming to you, asking you questions. What are you doing? What's going on?
Yeah. So when I did that show that I went pro at, it was kind of cool, man. Like I didn't know if it was going to work or not. Like it was uncharted territory. And backstage, like we've got like this, pump up room backstage where all the competitors are typically milling around, putting on tan, pumping up, making sure they're eating the right amount of food, water, et cetera, et cetera. And as is typical during that phase, most competitors are following traditional protocols in which they're not drinking very much water. They're trying to cut water. They're having like rice cakes with, some jelly or peanut butter on top and some salt. And they're thirsty. They're depleted.
A lot of people cut salt, right? So you're
A lot of
saying,
people cut salt. Yeah, it's there's a lot of bro science in the sport of bodybuilding. Some people do things the right way. Some people do things the wrong way. And I'm back here covered up backstage. I like saying covered up so I can stay warm. And I'm eating this 1,000-calorie big old chunk of fat that people are like, what the hell is this thing? And I'm drinking like a gallon of water, so I'm not thirsty. And I'm just like, chill. And then when it's time to step on stage, I take my robe off and I'm just freaking roadmap, man. Vascularity like I've never seen before. Like everything peaked perfectly, and went out and just demolished them. Got the pro card, and after the show was over, we went backstage, and everybody was like asking about this keto diet because it was obviously effective. And then I've since then just created content around that, replicated the process in myself and other clients. I mean, I had several clients earn their pro card with my protocol just this past year. I had one do it just past weekend. So yeah, you can definitely go pro and compete at an elite level in the complete absence of carbohydrates.
Yeah, I mean, and even restricting protein to some extent. There's some there's some data out there on protein restriction in kind of the elderly. There's some data on protein restriction. So it really doesn't. You don't necessarily need to add a significant amount, but most of the literature supports. A lot of literature supports adding protein. So this is like just it's not exactly what anybody's used to hearing. So I'm
Yeah, I'm
sure
a
people come and challenge you.
yeah, and I'm a huge advocate for protein. Like I don't. It sounds like I'm knocking protein, which is certainly not the case. Like I put protein, on a pedestal. I think protein is very important, obviously, from
But you're
building.
at 100 grams of protein. I mean, that's like half of what,
Yeah, I
or
mean,
a
for a
fraction
very
of it.
yeah, for a finite period of time, I am pretty low. And my theory is that in the context of a caloric deficit, as I am with the competition prep there, I want to do everything I can to preserve muscle tissue and maintain energy and preserve hormonal health. So these competitors that drop their fat down to like sub 30 grams of total dietary fat a day, like their hormones are tanking. Like that's not good. And then, for me, by keeping dietary fat relatively high, my hormones still drop because I'm at such a low intake, but they stay much more, even keel with that higher dietary fat. And then from an energy standpoint, since I'm fat adapted, the fat's my main source of energy, and having enough energy to continue to train hard and having enough hormone health to train hard is one of the best things you can do to preserve muscle tissue. So like continuing to demand that your muscles be used in the context of that caloric deficit is one of the best ways to ensure that your body keeps that muscle tissue. So if you're depleting yourself and you don't have any energy to train hard, you're going to lose a lot more muscle than if you have a good energy source and are continuing to train hard. So by me keeping that fat high, my energy source high, I'm able to continue training hard throughout the whole prep.
And your ability to use fat for fuel,
Yeah.
which at 10 pounds of body fat, it's still a huge caloric reservoir.
Yeah.
So, I'm just curious. Have you ever measured your cholesterol deep into prep?
I have. It's been a long time since I've gotten a cholesterol panel done. I need to do it again, but I try and get a hormone panel, cholesterol panel, like a C-reactive protein, just some markers at the onset of a prep, about halfway through and at the end, and then again at the end of the reverse diet. And my cholesterol markers have all been totally fine. I think last time I got it tested, my triglycerides were like 36 or 40 or something like that.
What does your LDL go up to? I'm imagining as you lean out that LDL edges up a little bit. You
Uh,
know,
I can I can pull it up, but it's been like 2 years I think since I've gotten. But it's never crazy high. Like a lot of these people in the carnivore keto space that are registering 400 plus LDL. Like I've never had that happen to me personally.
I'm imagining it gets higher than when you start though.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like when you're in a deficit like that for that long, like everything's impacted. Like your hormones are impacted, your cholesterol is impacted. I mean, everything's just impacted. So, you know, I think getting that blood work done at the onset of a cut like that and at the end is very key because a lot of people they'll go into a cut, they won't do it right, they won't know what their baseline markers are, and then they'll test them and they'll get frightened, they'll get some red marker, and it's just like you got to know what your starting numbers are to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. So help me understand. So where does, Robert Sikes live in terms of body composition when he's not, prepping like normal Robert Sikes? Where do you oscillate in terms of your body fat percentage and your weight? And where
Yeah.
does it go when you're, in a cut?
So right now I'm eating about 3,000 to 3,300 calories a day, which is right at maintenance or slight surplus for me. I am 5'8", 180 pounds, and my body fat at the moment is usually between 15 and 17%. But interestingly enough, my 17% body fat does not look like most people's 17% body fat. Like I posted a picture the other day, and most people guessed that I was at like 10% body fat. I think that just comes with training as long as I have, having more muscle maturity, more separation of the muscle tissue, and it's pretty evenly distributed 17% body fat. So I like the way I look at 17%. I like the way I look at 3%, which is typically where I'll get down to when I competing, but that's
So
obviously
hold
not.
on. So I just want to pause right here. So if you're listening, right, you have to understand there is a 15% body fat difference where the keto pro bodybuilder lives and where he competes at,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
So you guys have to understand this. A 15% difference in body fat. And I don't think people get this, right?
Yeah. It's a strange phenomenon, man. Like people, like single digit body fat for a guy, like I feel like a guy could live at 9% body fat and be healthy. Now, I think at 9% body fat, he's likely going to sacrifice some muscle building potential because you have to kind of diet pretty aggressively for most people to stay that lean, at maintenance. For me, like when I'm in a building phase, my goal is to build as much muscle tissue as possible in a healthy way. Like I don't want to have this massive swing, in weight like I did when I did that first prep and I was 230 pounds, had to get down to 150. I typically stay within 20 pounds of my competition weight now. So I'm 180 now. I'll compete probably somewhere around the 160 mark. And for me to do that and drop that weight healthfully over the course of 4 to 6 months allows me to preserve the muscle tissue that I've built and do so in a sustainable, healthy manner that preserves my healthy relationship with food. And then when I transition back into a building phase, I'm able to, build quality muscle tissue in between competitions. And I don't compete every single year. I compete every 2 or 3 or 4 years because it takes time to build muscle. This is why people that are cutting every single summer, every single 6 months, they're not really doing themselves any favors when it comes to, improving their hormonal baseline, their metabolic baseline, and just adding more lean tissue to their frame.
So people don't understand this. I mean, so when you put on 15% body fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you go about dropping, where you are in terms of your body composition, right? And thinking about like, this is totally fine. Because I think a lot of people coming to me, if I told them you're going to live 15% higher than when you want to be,
Yeah.
right? And you have to be okay with it because your goals are your hormonal health, building muscle, and other things,
Yeah.
right? And then when you want to lose weight and when you can devote, 100% of your mental energy and we're ready to, kind of progress, we'll progress. What do you
Yeah.
think about that mental dynamic?
There's definitely a mental dynamic to it. Like I I think of bodybuilding as a mental sport more so than a physical one, and I think of bodybuilding as something that we are all doing, whether we step on stage or not. Now, when it comes to the weight and the composition that you maintain in peak performance season versus everyday life, like you need to have a healthy window there. Um, like if you're 30% body fat, you wouldn't want to live at 45% body fat. So you wouldn't want to go north 15% from that unhealthy starting point. But like if you're, I mean, a good range for most people, males, for instance, 10 to 20%, 20 is kind of on the high end. I think 15% is probably, all that would be needed. And then for females, you can bump that up a little bit, between, 15 and 20, 23, 24, 25% body fat, 30% in some cases. But like having that healthy range is important. And if you're trying to lean down and you're chronically under eating, you can only do that for so long too. Like if you're at, 45% body fat and you lose 15% body fat, get to 30, then you can't just keep losing without giving your body a break and then get down to 20. Like you've got to give your body time to reset and restabilize and kind of improve that hormonal and metabolic baseline before you kind of go at another cut phase. These people that are chronically under eating and they're eating, sub 1,000 calories for years and years and years, what they're doing from a metabolic and a hormonal standpoint is just not good. Plus, it's very, very difficult to build and certainly maintain muscle tissue when you're chronically restricting. So, I mean, to build more tissue, you need to be eating at a surplus. And if you're trying to prioritize building lean tissue, which you should be, you can't be doing that if you're chronically under eating.
So this gets into like the discussion, and I know this is one of the areas we wanted to hit, which is, basically undieting, reverse dieting, because I think the people coming to see me are so good at I'm going to diet, I'm going to diet, I'm going to diet, I'm going to diet, and they do good and they lose weight, and then they get to this maintenance phase, and the idea in their mind is I have to restrict and go leaner. I have to restrict and go leaner. And sometimes it's like, no, just give your body a year or two right where you're at. Like if you keep the same, if you've lost 60 pounds or you've lost 70 pounds, they're after this competition ready physique that they see on Instagram. And it's like psychologically leading them to restrict. And I vehemently think it's going to backfire. It's like, if you're going to attempt restricting, restrict, but realize it's 3 months at least, right? 4 to 6 months in you of this mental battle,
Yeah.
right? Where eating is prescriptive. And then you don't live there. You come back to a baseline that you're happy with and content with, that's reasonable, which is probably 10% higher than where that other place is.
Yeah. You can't be having this grass is always green on the other side philosophy, to it, because then you'll just kind of stay in purgatory. Like you got to really double down on the phase that you're in. When I'm in a competition prep, I granted, most people aren't doing a competition prep, but the same principles apply. I track everything. I get incredibly dialed in. I don't leave anything to chance. And I'm very calculated with every single thing I'm doing, with my training, with my nutrition, with my sleep, with my recovery, with everything. Like there's a light switch moment. Like I flip that switch and it's just all systems go. And then when that cut is over, I do a reverse diet, and then I return to something that is more sustainable most of the time. Like I would not want to live in that space physically or mentally indefinitely, because it just wouldn't be healthy for me. And what's more is it wouldn't allow progress, because for people in a building phase, for people that are trying to embrace and have the healthy relationship with putting on some body fat, I think the main shift that needs to occur is that you have to recognize that that's where a lot of that progress is going to be made. Like for me as a bodybuilder, if I stayed at 5% body fat and didn't have a proper building phase, didn't give myself a caloric surplus, didn't build more muscle tissue, which is going to come with some additional body fat, then I would not look any better the next time I step on stage. And that should always be the goal, to get better every single year that passes. So with me embracing a little bit of body fat gain, living at that 15% for a few years, training hard, progressively overloading that training, building some more muscle tissue, I can feel confident that the next time I do lean down, I'll look better than the last time I leaned down. A lot of people that are chronically under eating and they're doing these cut phases, every 6 months, they actually wind up getting worse and worse and worse because they start becoming more catabolic. They start losing more muscle tissue. And you'll see this over competing competitor, they start looking worse every single year. And that's the exact opposite of what you're trying to accomplish.
I just want people to hear this, because they don't oftentimes I feel like they don't get it. They don't get it. How quickly you mentally flip from I'm focusing on physique to I'm focusing on how long I can do this, how sustainably I can do this, and building muscle.
Yeah.
And you are totally comfortable dealing with an extra 10 pounds of body fat when that happens.
Yeah.
Right. And this is so key. And I wish I could spread this amongst every single person who's lost a significant amount of weight in my practice. Right? Switch your goals. If your body's telling you no more, like, switch your goals. Listen to your body. Switch, adapt. Your body's saying, you don't want to lose more weight, get faster, get stronger. And don't overly restrict, change your goals up. Be okay with that for a bit, even if it's 2 years. When was your last cut?
My last cut was in 2020 with the intention of competing then, but then a week before the competition, so after I'd done all the dieting, the pandemic canceled the show.
Okay, so 2 years ago, you were at your cut phase. So you're probably thinking about another cut maybe for next summer.
Yeah, I'll be competing again next fall, actually.
Yeah, so, Keto Savage went 3 years just kind of maintaining his weight, heavier than he wants to be, and building muscle and doubling down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's so huge, man. It's so important. And in the natural bodybuilding space, like when you look at all the elite level natural bodybuilders, that's the methodology they all prescribe to. Like they're definitely doing something different with their nutrition than I am. But I've learned so much from other natural bodybuilders, because they'll there's one that's named Alberto Nunez. He just competed. He's competing again next week. He's freaking dialed in, man. Like he's just shredded. I think the last time he competed was 9 years ago, So like these windows of time is what makes this healthy and sustainable long term. Like if you have this short term approach to it all and you're just constantly chasing a lower scale number without any intention and focus towards building more lean tissue, improving your progressive overload with your training, then you're just not going to get better.
What about injuries? How do injuries come into the psychology of, bodybuilders? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in your clients, maybe in you. I've battled my fair share of injuries. So how does this play into the psychology of a bodybuilder?
I've been pretty fortunate, man. I've had some issues with my right shoulder after doing an incline dumbbell press that went wrong. And I slipped the lower facet joints in my back doing a set of squats, and I was pretty much out of the running for 2 weeks. That's pretty much been the only injuries that I've had. I think, honestly, when it comes to injury prevention, well, first of all, you can't be chronically restricting for too long. That's going to definitely bode itself to injuries. But then being just calculated with it, like having the proper form and technique is key. Knowing your body well enough to know when you're pushing it too far, having like a structured deload week. So a deload week is basically every 6 to 8 weeks, or just kind of depending on how your body's responding, take off on the intensity, like maybe 50% intensity for a week or so, to just let your central nervous system and everything fully regroup before tackling it hard the following week. So that's key. And then having the right diet is important, obviously. And then
I want to pause you right here because you just said something so insightful, and people, when you're weightlifting, there's muscles, there's connective tissue, and there's the central nervous system, right? And each one of these things adapts at a different rate. Your muscles will advance super quick. Your connective tissue thereafter. And if you're a prolonged exercise, meaning like you're an experienced exerciser, central nervous system adaptation takes the longest. Right? And people don't understand that you're relying on, some of these things you don't control. Like, you can control your, to some degree in our control is muscles, to some degree, in our control is tendons, but we don't have a good understanding of how to control the central nervous system. And so what you're saying is very insightful. It's like, give your brain a break. Don't just add load, maybe focus on volume, maybe focus on stretching or some other thing, walking, whatever it is, but and this is another graceful thing that most chronic dieters don't have, just like with, reverse dieting, which is give your body a break, that mentality, you could see it like flow through into everything, hey, deload, right? When you're, and this is like such a healthy way to approach, diet and exercise. So I just wanted to pause you there. So what do you do when your clients who do get injured? How do you coach them?
I mean, just finding things that they can do. Like, a lot of people subscribe to this, give everything a complete rest, which I disagree with. I think it's important for the blood to be flowing. You want to bring blood. I mean, this kind of depends on the nature of the injury, but generally speaking, from a training injury, it's advantageous to engorge that muscle, that area, that tissue with blood to deliver more nutrients, and that's going to expedite the recovery process. So if I hurt my shoulder, for instance, doing like a pressing movement, I'm not going to take 3 weeks off of lifting and do zero lifting. Like, I want to find other movements that I can do that can still provide that blood flow and stimulate that region. That's going to improve my ability to recover. Plus, I just like moving. I like training. So, like, from a mental standpoint, it's going to keep me sane. If I just took 3 weeks off of training, I'd probably go crazy. That's going to be more damaging than the injury itself. So yeah, I think just finding things that don't injure the area further, but still engorge that area with blood is probably one of the single best things you can do. And then obviously staying on top of the nutrition and just simply getting enough sleep and making sure you're getting enough time in the parasympathetic state. Like, everybody's so chronically stressed all the time. That's not going to bode well for recovery either.
I 100% agree. I want to shift gears a little bit because we've talked about, health and, I mean, I talk about that so much. I'm a little interested in you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So how painful was it, man? So you put out the Keto Brick. You're a hustler, just like we are. You're doing, new things that other people haven't done, podcasts, content. So just give me an idea of what was it like to put out this product? Like, I don't think people understand, to commercialize a food product is just not easy. So how did you make that one? Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should spend money, time, and effort to do this. And, now I'm jealous of it. I hear you have a compound with a gym. So tell me about that a little bit. How you started.
It's been a long road, brother. So we started making this, like I said, for my own personal consumption during that 2017 prep, and enough interest was there for us to decide to build a business around it. So my girlfriend at the time, wife now, Crystal, she started diving into certifications for health permits, and I was doing that with her. But she was doing a lot of that. I was diving into marketing strategies, brand building, finding wholesale suppliers for ingredients, et cetera, et cetera. But we were totally blind. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I knew nothing about owning a food product business. Like getting a health department out there to certify a space. So in our area, actually not in our area, 3 hours from where we were living, there was a commercial kitchen space that you could lease by the hour, $20 an hour. So we would load up the ingredients that we'd purchased in my truck, drive 3 hours.
I know
Sit there.
exactly what this is like. My wife did the
Yeah.
same exact thing, man. It was not fun.
Yeah, we would stay up all night long making these bricks. The first time we did this, we were mixing each brick individually with a fork and a spoon in a measuring cup. It took us all night to make 142 bricks. We wrapped them all up, took them, drove 3 hours back that same night after working, all day the day prior. So like zero sleep. Put them all on the website, not knowing what was going to happen, and they all sold out within like 2 minutes. And that was like the aha moment of like, what the hell just happened? Let's see if we can expand on this. So we just started buying more ingredients. But at that time, we weren't buying in bulk, so we were paying retail for these ingredients. So we were losing money, like we weren't making any money with it. So it's kind of hard to stay motivated because you're not. I mean, we certainly weren't paying ourselves. We were like sleep deprived and broke. Like I was $250,000 in debt when we started this business. So I was not a pretty picture. And then we were doing that and just kept growing and growing and growing. So we wound up moving closer to this commercial kitchen space so we wouldn't have to drive 3 hours. And then we found another commercial kitchen space that was like 3 separate warehouse buildings. And we got a lease on 2 of those, like a 3-year lease. And we could not get approved for an apartment nearby because I had no pay stubs because we had just gone full blown into this business. So we talked our landlord into letting us sleep in the warehouse. So we slept and lived in this warehouse for 3 years while we
Holy
were building
shit,
this
man.
business. Like there was no
Holy
shower
shit.
there. I was having to drive to the gym to use the shower. I eventually tore out a toilet and built a shower. But I talked to my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, to live in a warehouse with me for 3 years. So that was
So she deserves like a Nobel Prize, basically.
yeah, no, she's a
Yeah.
trooper for sure. So
Yeah.
we did that, and then we
You hear
expanded.
that, Rosette? You hear that? We're gonna buy because my dream is to get a compound like yours, but more for like personal training and physical therapy and
Yeah,
weight loss and Ro, you're gonna sleep in the warehouse. So if
there
you're
you
listening
go.
to this,
We did it, man. We did it. And we did that for like I said 3 years. Lots of memories were built there. We had different employees. We learned all about hiring and firing and getting the right team. And then just growing the business. And then in 2020, when the world was on fire, we bought an old grocery store that had been abandoned and was up for sale in Lincoln, Arkansas. So pretty close to where we were originally, 3 hours north again. So we bought that warehouse space with money that we didn't really have, but we just went all in on it, burned the boats mentality. And we took a year to renovate that old grocery store into the compound that we have now. So all new walls, all new paint, all new everything, like totally built it from the ground up. We've got a gym now, podcast studio, commercial kitchen space, like everything's just the way I want it. And it's a 15,000 square foot compound. So that's where we're
wow,
at now.
that's huge, man. 15,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
That's huge. How big is the gym?
The gym's like 30 by 100 roughly.
So that's 3,000 square feet.
Yeah, yeah. And we've got
Okay.
like a section of it that's all MMA. So like we got jujitsu mats, punching bags, and I've got the rest of it's gonna be it's just all weight training equipment that I'm just gonna continue to build out with.
That's kind of awesome. Is this like a open to the public?
No, I can see us eventually opening up another gym that's like public access because
Yeah.
the land the building's on, we bought the property. It's on 4 acres, so like there's a field just behind our building now that I can see eventually building out another gym that would be public access.
Oh, it just can't be. It's like connected to the other things. Is that
Yeah, exactly.
Man, I'm jealous. I'm jealous. So if there's somebody listening who wants to make my dream happen, I want to buy a compound and get, physical therapy, gym, and our metabolic, focused care. That's awesome, man. So, I mean, that sounds like a lot of stress for, a new
Yeah.
dad and a newly married, and So, tell me how you balance all this stuff.
Man, I don't balance anything, to be honest with you. Like I've always said balance is bullshit. And I mean that when I say it. Like I've subscribed to this new philosophy called tensegrity. So tensegrity being defined as tensional integrity. I believe that there are things in my life that are not opposing forces. They are all symbiotic in nature. And there's times when those pillars, those important pillars of my life, get more attention. There's times when they get less attention, but they all push the needle forward. And this tensional integrity, when those things are under tension, as they are more often than not, it causes the entire spectrum to improve. So rather than balance where one thing's getting better, one thing's getting worse, I try to move the needle forward in all aspects of my life because I've reverse engineered my life from the ground up and truly just tried to focus my time and attention on things that I want to do. So, everything that's in my life, the business that we've built, the lifestyle that we live, it's all things that I've wanted to do from a very early age. Like they're all symbiotic in nature. So everything grows together.
That's awesome, man. Any difficulties? No.
Oh
Do you
yeah.
train people? Do you train people in that gym, or is it just your personal gym?
So it's just my personal gym. Like we have it, my employees all have access to it. So we've got eight of us here total. And like we train together. Like I've got one of my clients, he's actually driving up here today. And he's trained in jujitsu MMA. So he's going to like train my whole workforce. We're going to be punching each other and kicking each other here in a little bit, which is kind of cool. But like every single week we work out together, we train together. It's just a good team building experience.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm jealous. I gotta get that. I gotta get a gym. I think our New York City prices are a little bit more than
Oh,
Arkansas.
for sure. Lincoln, Arkansas is out in the middle of nowhere. That's the beauty of it, though. Like with the keto bricks, like we ship internationally, so like location didn't really matter. So we just got more land and more building out in the middle of nowhere.
This is awesome. Listen, any parting words? So it's coming on an hour. You know what? Let's open it up to some questions. If you guys have a question, the listeners, I want to thank the our Patreon supporters or people on our app. Really appreciate all your support. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it. And Rob, if somebody wants to find you, if somebody wants to work with you, if they want to find the Keto Brick, where do people go if they're more interested about you or what you're doing? Where do they go?
Yeah, so Keto Savage on Instagram, ketosavage.com online. I mean, that points to ketobrick.com. That points to my book, ketogenicbodybuilding.com. Like it's all under the Keto Savage umbrella, basically.
Got it. Awesome. And social media, same, the email, they can all get you there, right?
Yep. And the email contact form on my website goes straight to me.
Awesome. Listen, I appreciate it. Looks like today we got 10 people, nobody with questions though. So we'll call it for today. This was awesome, man. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you coming on, and keep hustling, man.
Appreciate you, man. Keep killing it. And by all means, come to the compound and get a workout in with me, man.